Hello, fellow members of the Midnight Society. Welcome to a special episode where I'll be going back to Season 2 and ranking each episode from worst to best. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I call this the Tale of the Bobcat Madness. Season 2 has 13 episodes, and more importantly than the episode count, it's the season where Eric was murdered! Moved away, and it's so very, very sad. To end things on a high, I'll be going from my worst rated episode to my best rated one. Now, these are only my opinions on these episodes, and if you feel differently about them, that's awesome, and I would love to hear your picks in the comments below.
Do it!
I did polls on Reddit, YouTube, and Facebook for the best and worst episodes of the season, and I'll be posting those results near the end of the video. Now, I will say this. I think Season 2 may be the strongest season of the series. Even the episodes I didn't care for were mostly fine. That being said, let's kick it off with my worst episode of Season 2. The Tale of the Full Moon. Frank's story about a pet detective who treats his partner like a dog because his mom won't let him have a real one. While looking for a neighbor's cat, he discovers that a werewolf might be living across the street. This was, in my opinion, easily the worst episode of the season. It could have worked. The concept was very similar to a number of successful horror movies where, someone's convinced there's a monster next door, but no one will believe them. Where it fails is in almost everything else. Jed is an unlikable protagonist. He's selfish, he overcharges his customers for his own greedy needs, he treats his best friend like a dog, and worse yet, he interrupts bath time. I know there's a werewolf in this story, but it's obvious that Jed is the real monster here. You don't ever interrupt bath time.
Aw, Jed, I'm taking a bath. Towel off.
While I appreciate the nods to John Waters and Tim Burton, it's all so inconsistent across the look of everything that it really kills the episode for me. If the whole neighborhood had the same vibe as Jed's house, it would make sense, but everything else looks modern. It would be one thing if Jed's mom just sort of liked the decade and her decor was inspired by it, but this bitch is dropping terms like Kelvinator, and Jed completely understands her. I'm all for stylizing an episode if it makes sense and is consistent, but this 50s aesthetic just isn't, and it feels so out of place with the werewolf story. The thing I did enjoy about this episode was the look of the werewolf. I know some people think it looks bad, but for a show with this low of a budget, I think it looks great. I just wish we could have had more scenes of it on the prowl. This episode really could have used a chase. Jed running from the creature. You still don't need to show the creature all that much, and that costume moving quickly through darkness would have been really terrifying. Unfortunately, what we got left me wishing for a better episode. Speaking of which, The Tale of the Final Wish. Kristen's story about a girl obsessed with fairy tales who makes a wish that turns her dreams into a nightmare. Anyone who watches my reviews knows that I am not a fan of Kristen's tales. This one started out with some real promise, but started losing steam when, well, I think we all know when. Aside from our villain's lack of menace, I thought the acting in this episode was really good. Our lead, Jill, was a phenomenal scream queen. I just wish that she had a scarier villain to contend with. The Land of Nod was also a great idea to include, but you can really feel the show's low budget when they're there. It would have been nice if it could have had a more dreamlike or nightmarish quality. Or both, right? Started off more dreamy, and then after her confrontation with the Sandman, everything shifts into nightmare fuel. Okay, let's get back to my main issue with this episode, Bobcat Goldthwait.
At your service?
Look, I get that it was the second season, and getting some bigger name guest stars was a good thing for the show, but you gotta use your guest stars properly. The Sandman was the wrong role for Bobcat. He would have been terrific in a Sardo episode. Make him some kind of rival magic shop owner that causes the magical mishap that Sardo gets blamed for, forcing Sardo to work with the story's main character to stop it and Bobcat? Could you imagine Bobcat and Richard Dumont in a scene together? I kind of want to write this episode right now! Except, that it would only sadden me that it would never actually be made. Speaking of Sardo, though, the next episode on the list has him selling a confidence potion to a hapless teen. The Tale of the Dark Dragon. The David story that features stand-in characters for him, Gary, and Kristen in a weird love triangle. Come on, guys. The good-looking jock character was named Gary in the story. Now look, I know Gare Bear isn't a jock, but he is dreamy.
That's so gross.
The episode itself is well made. Good acting, great makeup, and a Sardou appearance never hurts anything, but the resolution and message is what really pissed me off more than any other episode in the season. Now look, we all have our own personal biases that we bring to our viewing parties, and as a result, we see things differently. Some see this episode as a metaphor for drug use, but I saw it as a story about accepting oneself and being proud of who you are. Sadly, the story doesn't go that way, and it just turns into your problems can be fixed by being good looking. Now look, I'm not going to harp on this point because, I went pretty deep into that already in my episode review, but just know it infuriated me. In fact, the treatment of Mariah is what really raised my hackles. Everything she does in the episode is to get Keith's attention, and he doesn't give a shit about her until she's beautiful. I just found it really gross. She deserved better. Sardou was great as per usual, but I do have questions. Why did he keep the Keith of rabbits in his shop? Also, the potion is supposed to present your best side and then physically represent your dark side. What kind of dark side did that f***ing rabbit have? I know Disney animals have complex personalities, but do real rabbits long for satiny soft fur while their subconscious plots the murder of their fellow rabbits? Check out my new podcast where we explore these complex issues and more. It's called Getting Inside Animals. Okay. Having said that out loud, I think that title's gonna need a rework. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Now we are on to the episodes that I marked favorably, although some of them just barely. First up, and the worst of the best, is The Tale of Old Man Corkran. Kiki's tale about ghosts that lure children to their deaths so they can increase the numbers of their afterlife game of hide and seek. This episode is a great concept for a ghost story. Playing hide and seek in a graveyard at night? Are you kidding me? For a kid, that would be terrifying. Unfortunately, the bad acting and lack of scares in this one really stop it from being great. Now, I will admit, it is an episode that is better on the rewatch because knowing that the kids are dead gives the audience the chance to see some of the characters' motivations in a whole new light.
We got enough people in the group. We don't need any more.
I do have some questions that go well beyond the scope of this episode, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. If a ghost is trapped on the physical plane, never passing on, surely they would mentally mature, yes? Similar to a child vampire? Physically, they would be a child, but mentally, I'm not so sure they'd be longing for a game of hide and seek, really. Especially since it's established that they can leave the graveyard, during the day even, and they can even be seen when they want to. I'd be out there hitting the movies, going to clubs, pranking school administrators. I can't be alone on this, right?
Hide and seek is not like any other game.
I think this story would have benefited from more Corkran. If we had spent the majority of the time at the graveyard playing the game and having more ghostly sightings of Old Man Corkran to up the scare factor, it would have been more of a banger. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I do think it's a toss-up between this episode and the next one as to which one I actually prefer more. The Tale of Locker 22. Kristen's tale about a teen girl who is taken back in time by a ghost to prevent a tragedy. And what tragedy was the ghost trying to prevent? The episode's representation of the 60s.
Whoa. Cool.
While not a great episode for me, I did enjoy the time travel element to it, even if I found their representation of a 60s high school appalling. There wasn't anything scary about this one, but that was by design. I think the acting in the episode was good, though I would like to point out that some people had daggers for the lead actress in the comments regarding her accent. I thought it was fine, but to the trained Canadian ear, the Quebec accent sounds nothing like a French accent from France.
Paris. My parents came here for business.
The other issue I had with this episode was a set dressing thing. The school looked pretty dumpy inside, and I thought it was going to be, connected to the death of Candy, and when her life was saved, the kids would come back and the school would be looking bright and shiny, but no, it's just a dumpy-looking school with graffiti all over it. So, as the French would say, "Cela voulez-vous cacher avec moi?" Or "Les sourires sur la table?" I don't know, something like that. Anyway, moving on to our next episode. The Tale of the Magician's Assistant. Gary's story about magic that actually doesn't feature Sardou for a change, but includes the equally charming Shandu. This episode has a lot of good things going for it. A bit of mystery, a great villain, and some great effects and camera shots. The thing I didn't like about this episode was our main character, Todd. I didn't care for his acting or the characterization, and even though his initial intentions seem noble enough, he mostly comes across as a bit of an entitled twat.
Hear what I said? The guy's a boss from hell.
I know the feeling.
Wonder what Dad would tell me to do.
What saves this episode is the actor playing Shandu. He is really great. You believe him as this aging magician, but he's got charisma. In fact, I want to see Shandu, Sardo, and Bobcat in an episode stat. Anyway, our villain was also great, even though we don't get much of him. It's not a scary story, though there are moments that I believe were intended to be scary or shocking and, probably serve their purpose on a younger audience. The episode had some great effects and, the makeup on budget Emperor Palpatine was also good. My favorite effect was the camera shot where Shandu appears in the toaster and the camera pulls back to show Todd in the room alone. It's a very minor effect, but it was well done. Moving on to our next episode, this one was a first because it's a Kiki tale, but Gary was the one telling it. The Tale of the Dream Machine. Kiki's story about a shy teen who finds a magic typewriter that makes what he types on it come true. It's just your classic story. Boy likes girl, girl doesn't seem to know boy exists, boy finds magic typewriter makes what's typed on it happen in dreams, boy writes story to allow him to kiss girl in dream, boy also writes into story that girl kisses boy back in dream. I don't think this is a classic story at all.
I'm not sure.
While I loved the concept of the episode and, everything's mostly fine, I really wish we could have cut some of the sequences to give us more backstory on the typewriter. The fact that it was found in a sealed, hidden room was already intriguing, but if we could have gotten a few more details about it or the disappearance of the previous owner, it would have been a cherry on top.
I don't know, it's just weird.
It also would have been nice if Sean's stories, as they were playing out, were shot in a way that made them a bit scarier. I know not all episodes were meant to be scary, just like not all Twilight Zone episodes were scary, but this story could have had some good scary moments if they tried. Unless their idea of scary was the teacher who just can't stop eating even in the bathroom, in which case they went too far with the scares.
The blind holes creeping closer and closer.
I seriously hated the character of the teacher and her constant snacking. I hated her with the burning fire of 1,000 suns. I hated her so much, I can't even verbalize it, all right? Madeline, help me out here.
I hated her so much. Flames on the side of my face.
You see, even Madeline Kahn can't express it in words. Anyway, overall, it's a pretty good episode, even if the resolution is a bit wonky, but that's just the result of anything that features f***ing with time. When you think about it, if the typewriter never worked, the owner from the house wouldn't have gone missing, and might still be living there to this day or have family that lives there, so Sean might not be living there presently. It's just one of those things you have to not think too much about. Oh, speaking of things someone didn't think too much about, the next episode's backstory is super dumb. The Tale of the Frozen Ghost. Kristen's story about a rich kid who is sent to stay with his aunts for the weekend and discovers their farm is haunted by the ghost of a little boy who's dressed like Liberace. Where this episode excels is before we ever see the ghost. There are some great moments early on building up the suspense of the ghost. It isn't until we get to this that the tension is lost.
Hi there!
Sorry, my bad. Same vibe though. In retrospect, I don't love this episode, but it has Melissa Joan Hart in it, and I think that is skewing my judgment heavily. If you're curious as to why, clearly you didn't watch Clarissa Explains It All as a teenager. Melissa, if you're watching. I think I dreamed you into life. The backstory about the ghost is, what really kills the episode for me. When everything is resolved, nothing really makes any sense. The flue key is in the boy's jacket, which is in a log. The criminal took the kid's jacket, but then what? Put the flue key in the jacket and stuck the jacket back in the tree? It doesn't add up. Either the guy would have gotten the flue key back and collected his gold, or the boy would have gotten his jacket back and been fine. In any event, the most interesting part of the episode is what we don't know, and that is why was Maylene needle-pointing a bloody axe onto that fabric? She definitely killed that criminal, and probably the kid as well. Anyway, moving on from kids being sent to relatives to kids being sent to a boarding school. The Tale of the Hatching. David's story about a brother and sister sent to a boarding school that is secretly being run by lizard people. I really enjoyed this episode. It had some great use of the school setting and a lot of creepy moments. The Taylors were outstanding villains who were clearly having fun with the duality of the role, kind one moment and evil at the end. I've heard a lot of people give this one flack for the look of the master, but I disagree. As far as puppets go for monsters, I thought the filmmakers did the best they could using the lighting and effects to really sell the creature.
Once the eggs are hatched, the children will serve another purpose.
Young ones will be very hungry.
What I did have a problem with was the silly method by which the creatures were dispatched. Like, how do you expect to take over the world when the first time a police siren blares, your entire army explodes into green goo? I know the solution needed to be something that a kid could win with, but I don't know, I just wish it was something less silly than a high-pitched sound. Moving on to our next tale, it's one that a lot of people consider the best of the season. Yeah, now we're getting to the good stuff. The Tale of the Midnight Madness. Frank's tale about Dr. Vink providing a failing movie theater with films that will bring in an audience, but in exchange, he must be allowed to play his own movies every so often. I mean, look, I wouldn't have taken that deal. Have you seen how this nutbag enters a building?
I am not a nutbag.
The best part of this episode is Vink's vampire movie that is a clear homage to the 1922 silent film Nosferatu. It is so well done, and while in black and white, the vampire is scary. When it comes into the real world, however, he looks like Cletus the hillbilly vampire. Fortunately, that doesn't detract from what is otherwise a great episode. Both of our leads are great and likable. We have multiple villains and a great setting in the movie theater. It's also the second appearance of Dr. Vink, securing him as the series' first recurring character within the tales. While I really did enjoy this one, it just missed my top 3 by a small amount. Speaking of which, in the number 3 spot, The Tale of the 13th Floor. The Betty Ann story about a brother and sister that visit a mysterious toy factory that has opened on the 13th floor of their apartment building. I mean, the plot sounds really stupid when you say it out loud.
There are no winners in this game.
This is a great episode with a throwback feel to old 50s sci-fi movies. The look of the toy factory especially has this vibe. I also love the appearances of the aliens. Let me elaborate on that because I love the human appearance of the aliens as well as their natural faceless look. Their human appearance is off just enough that when you find out they're aliens, it makes complete sense, right? They don't really know how humans dress or behave, and the actors nail that aspect here. In fact, all the acting in this episode was great.
That's better.
Where the episode falls short is in the details. When you really think about the plot, it makes no sense. The aliens have to leave by a certain time because they'll run out of atmosphere. Okay, then why not just judo chop the brother, grab Karen, and go? Like, why the whole toy factory ruse? The kids use the elevator all the time and expect a lift operator, so just grab her there. Also, the atmosphere thing doesn't really make sense. If they can't live without it, how the f*** is Karen still alive? And why would she have a human appearance all this time? And even if I believed that a baby alien already had a human appearance, you expect me to believe that Billy's parents just took this baby upon finding it instead of calling the police to find the real parents? Or did they know their neighbors were aliens and just took Karen in so that she wouldn't be dissected? Either way, I'd say they've got some splaining to do. Regardless of the issues I have with the plot, the episode is a lot of fun and has one of the best shocker endings in the series. The only thing shocking about the next episode is that it's my number 2 pick, since it seemed like most others didn't share my love for it. The Tale of the Whispering Walls. Betty Ann's story about a babysitter and her wards getting trapped in a haunted house. While I find the main villain's weakness completely laughable, the haunted house itself makes up for that. I mean, the shot of Louise trapped in the wall alone is already worth the price of admission.
Help me, Louise?
What holds this episode back is how frequently we leave the haunted house. The Whisper Inn and the haunted house should have been the same place, so there would be no breaks in the action. Technically, the Whisper Inn is also haunted, but we don't get the good stuff there. When the kids leave the house to go back to the inn, it really kills the pacing of the episode. We could have just gone from scare to scare, but instead we got... The acting in this one was great across the board, with Louise being a particular standout. The effects were top-notch, and our villain was imposing and sinister. He's over the top in just the right way. In fact, his only downside was his weakness to wind. Wind. The plot in this one is missing. But, I mean, it's fine because it's just the kids and their babysitter trying to escape a haunted house. You know, I could have done with, you know, less of like the party sequence and, you know, had some kind of backstory on Master Raymond instead. Like anything about Master Raymond or the house. You know, anything at all. But it's really a minor gripe on what kid me would have considered a very spooky episode. As much as I do enjoy this one, my number one pick leaves every other episode in the dust. The Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle. David's story about a teen dealing with the loss of his best friend who starts getting haunted by that friend's ghost. Not only is this the best episode of the season, but it might be the best episode of the series. It's a toss-up for me between this and The Tale of the Dream Girl. Both episodes have tremendous acting and deal with loss while also featuring ghosts, though I'd say this episode has the edge because, you know, Dream Girl has zero scares at all. Not only does our lead actor do a great job with the material, but the script itself breaks the Are You Afraid of the Dark mold a bit. We don't have an absentee family, and while they may go about it in the wrong way, the parents are genuinely trying to help their son through his grief. It's also the first truly dramatic episode of the series, I would say. I mean, they kill a kid in the tale's opening, and the rest of the episode is Mike blaming himself for not saving his friend. The fact that we also get scares on top of great storytelling is awesome. And not just scares. Scares like this. Now look, I know we're not all going to agree that The Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle is the best episode of the season, but this episode gave us a gift that no one can argue hasn't improved all of our lives.
Looks like someone's gonna fall asleep in his corn wackies.
Introducing Corn Wackies, the breakfast cereal that's made from corn, but it's so wacky that each box comes with a full cob of corn. That's right, I'm talking about Corny Cob here. And don't worry, kids, that corn is injected, infused, soaked, coated, and sprinkled with high fructose corn syrup. Part of a complete breakfast. A small part. Corn Wackies.
So those were my Season 2 episode rankings, but now it's time to know what you all thought. I'm not going to go through every episode, but I am going to list the top 3 episodes and the bottom 3 episodes based on the polls that I ran. Let's start at the bottom again. While not exactly the same, your bottom pick was my second bottom pick because you all voted The Tale of the Final Wish as the worst episode of Season 2. JTT Waddle said, worst, The Final Wish because Bobcat isn't scary. See? I'm not alone on that point. Though we did have some people who were Team Bobcat with We Fall Down saying not even Bobcat could polish this turd into something shinier. Huh. I believe that's exactly what critics said about Unhappily Ever After.
You're getting warmer, but you're only half right.
The second worst episode based on your votes was The Tale of the Full Moon, with Nicholas G saying it's an episode I find particularly boring. Okay, so my worst pick was your second worst pick. I feel like we're really vibing right now. In fact, if your third worst pick is Dark Dragon, I think this is destiny. Okay? Let's find out. Let's find out. Moment of truth, right? Your third worst episode of Season 2 is a tie between The Tale of the Dream Machine and The Tale of the Hatching. Worldly Impress 5077 had this to say about Dream Machine. It was good, but just didn't stand out to me among the others. And I feel like that was a popular sentiment regarding most episodes this season. It was really hard for people to pick a worst episode because the season was so strong. But come on! Dark Dragon wasn't your third worst? Well, where did it fall? Fourth worst. Okay. Alright, you know what? Fourth is fine. Well, I can deal with fourth. I don't have to freak out, but I want to. Let's end this thing on the positive. According to you, the Midnight Society members, the top 3 episodes of Season 2 are, starting in third place, The Tale of Locker 22, with certain bowler 8735 saying, my fave is Locker 22 because it's so goofy. Okay, see that we're voting for these things for the wrong reasons, but that's fine. That is fine. That is that's perfectly fine. In second place, we have The Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle, with Rachel Jackson saying, "The Tale of the Shiny Red Bicycle is an underrated gem for me." You're telling me underrated? It just got robbed for first, which can only mean one thing. Your number one best episode of Season 2 is The Tale of the Midnight Madness, with Rocktober Blood saying, "This is what I'd consider a perfect episode." You know what? My picks were actually way closer to all of yours this season, so this is fine. I'm not mad at it, that you know of. Thank you all for participating in the polls for this video. There were so many votes across the polls on Reddit, YouTube, and Facebook. If you didn't have a chance to participate, let me know your rankings in the comments below. Be sure to check out the next episode on the best and worst storytellers of seasons 1 through 5. Until then, are you afraid of the dark? Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and a share. Don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon to be notified when more Midnight Society videos go up. And remember, if it doesn't hit Micro Machines, it's not the real thing!